Good evening. The time is now 5 o'clock on June 20th of 2023, and it's time to call the Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Thank you all for attending today. Ms. Patterson, will you please go ahead and note attendance for the record?
Yes.
Thank you. Committee members, having reviewed the agenda, are there any objections?
No objections.
Okay, hearing no objections, the agenda is approved. So now we move on to public comment. At this time, we ask whether there are any members of the public who would like to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, to the extent that there is an item that you'd like to speak to that is on the agenda. For example, the parking ordinance or the strategic plan extension for fire, then we'd ask that you hold your comment until that time. There are a couple of members of the public here today. So is there a matter that you'd like to speak to that is not on the agenda? No? All right, I'll go ahead and check online to see if we have anybody there. And it looks like we don't have any other members of the public online. So in that case, we'll go ahead and close public comment at this point, and we'll move on to the minutes. Are there any concerns or questions about the minutes from June 5th of 2023?
None from me.
They're so good.
Thank you. Hearing no objections, the minutes dated June 5th of 2023 are approved. The next item that we have on the agenda is Agenda Bill 23-051. This is the parking permit ordinance. And we have Captain Lynch who's going to speak to that.
Council members, Mayor, thank you for having me back once again for this never-ending saga of parking. I get you caught up on a few of the things that we've been doing since the last time I was here to meet. On June 7th, we sent a letter over to the management at Panorama Apartments and asked them to distribute this. One of the responses that I got did not work.
Is this working?
Yeah, it's
There we go.
better.
One of the responses that I got from one of the tenants, apparently my letter was taped to the doors of the apartments, so they were sure to see them. And I don't believe that you've been able to see this letter yet, but I'll read it real quick into the record. To the residents of Panorama Apartments, as you may have heard, the city of Snoqualmie has been in discussions recently regarding the possible creation of a residential permit parking zone in the neighborhood just outside the main entrance to your apartment complex. This process has been difficult to say the least. The police department and the city council both recognize the need for additional parking spaces at the Panorama Apartments. And at the same time, we have to take into consideration the concerns of the citizens who live along Frontier Avenue Southeast, Ash Avenue Southeast, Southeast Nye Street, and Elm Avenue Southeast. I would like to formally invite each of you to participate in this ongoing discussion at our next Public Safety Committee meeting on Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 at 5 p.m., which will be held at the City Council Chambers at Snoqualmie City Hall. If you are unable to attend this meeting and would like to send me an email with your concerns, please feel free to send any correspondence, and then my email address is listed. Your voice needs to be heard during this process, and I look forward to seeing you. So that went out on the 7th, and I did receive 3 different emails from people that live at the Panorama Apartments. I believe, I'm not sure if you have these yet online or in a packet. I gave them to Deanna so that you will have access to the full emails on here. I do want to read one of them in particular. It says, "Hello, Captain Lynch. My family lives at the Panorama Apartments, and I would like to share my hope in regards to the parking situation." And this was from a tenant named Lloyd Burleson. "I absolutely understand frustrations of any homeowners in the area who have had to accommodate hundreds of additional people added to the neighborhood and the vehicles that come along with that. However, I'm hopeful that they will also be understanding of the situation of some of the tenants in the apartments. For example, I am married and have had 2 children, and we live in a 2-bedroom apartment with 1 designated parking space. I work in an office on the ridge and frequently require a vehicle to go to work. Therefore, we have a second vehicle, and my wife runs errands, travels to appointments, goes shopping, and to do the other tasks required of a stay-at-home parent. Because of this second vehicle, we commonly park it off the complex campus on Ash or Frontier. My hope is that whatever adjustments are being discussed include consideration for the people in our situation. In summary, a second vehicle can be a necessity for many of the families in the complex that do not have access to a second parking spot. I'm not sure what solutions are being discussed, but I'm hopeful that there is an answer that works for all parties. That is the sentiment for the other two emails as well that you will have access to. A couple of weeks ago, I met with Councilmember Christensen and we were going to discuss this problem. And I said, well, how about instead of meeting for coffee, let's drive over and talk to the people at Panorama Apartments. So I took her to the office and we spoke to people at Panorama, and the management was able to give us a little bit more of a breakdown on how the parking spaces are divvied out. And we heard directly from them on the understanding that they do not have enough parking spaces. They feel the same frustrations, but there's absolutely nothing at their level that they are going to be able to do to add more spaces. It was a good conversation, I believe. We asked them to come up with an actual number of how many vehicles are associated with the apartments. And it was going to be a very difficult time, painstaking thing to go through all of the information that they have to get that. I've reached out a couple of times, hopefully to get the information for tonight, but was unable to get those numbers from them as of yet. As soon as I do, I will forward those to Councilmember Christensen, and she can put it into the record or give them to you guys. At the beginning of last week's city council meeting, I did have an opportunity to speak with Councilmember Johnson, who was in that neighborhood the previous Sunday at approximately 8 o'clock and took a photograph of Jacobia and the parking running up the hill from Frontier towards the park. At 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening, there were empty parking spots along Jacobia that lead me to believe that while it might be a little bit of a inconvenience if we were to put in a permitted parking zone, it would increase the walk to get into the apartments by a couple of blocks. But I was very hopeful by that information. And then since then, I've gone up there a couple of times in the evening to confirm with my own eyes that there are plenty of parking spaces that are open along Jacobia. So I'm hoping that if we were to compromise on keeping the north side of, I don't even know if it's the north side. I just said the north side, and I don't really know. So when you turn onto Frontier, heading to the apartments, the one on the right is the west side. Okay. The west side of that street as an unpermitted parking. So we could still have people from the apartment complex park on that side of the street. And then adjust the time of the permitted parking requirement to where it wasn't 24 hours a day like I had first suggested. Maybe it goes to unpermitted at 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening. And then the signs could reference those times where it would be enforced. I'm feeling like that we're reaching the point where it's kind of the best compromise that I can find right now, where it's still taking into consideration the hardships that we're going to put on people who park just outside of the gate. They're going to have to walk a further distance, but it's also listening to the citizens that live in that neighborhood. And it's kind of basically giving both sides of this argument a win. So that's kind of where I'm landing on the times, and then having that extra parking on the west side of Frontier open to general parking 24 hours a day still. We had a discussion at my last opportunity to be up here in front of you about whether or not to have stickered permits on the windows, and maybe going 100% with the hanging cardboard type of parking permits from the windshield or the rear view mirror. In talking to the people that have been showing up for the public safety meetings that live in that neighborhood, overwhelmingly, they are against having just the hanging permits in the window for their everyday use. And I can understand the concerns on that, which would lead me to throw my support towards still having stickers for the cars that would be registered to those homes, and also give out the visitor passes that they could give to family members or people that were visiting. So at this point, I think I've put in probably, since the last time that we've met, probably a good 15 to 20 hours of work on this and trying to contact people. And I would like this today to have direction from the committee, and then be able to take that information and send to legal to have what this final permitted parking program would look like. And I could come back at the next meeting and show you what an actual ordinance would look like. So at this time, I would entertain any questions or concerns from the council members, and hopefully I can provide some guidance.
Councilmember Benson.
Yeah, a couple of questions I had. Do we know what percentage of the homes in that Eagle Point area don't have a garage?
You mean the residents that are outside of the panorama?
Mhm.
That I do not. I know that the majority of them do. There's ones that you can't see the garage from the street, but there's an alley that has access to garages along along Elm and Frontier. Their garages are on the back side of the alley. So I do not have a number for you for a percentage of how many do not have a garage.
Because I'm just thinking about, if you're a 2-car household and you have a garage, but you want 2 parking permits, then, in a place where parking is not at a premium, great, but you wouldn't have a parking permit situation in that place. In a place where it is a premium and you want a parking permit because you don't want to park in your garage, then really you're storing your stuff on the street. Is, whatever is keeping you from parking in the garage is basically taking up a parking space. So I'd be curious to know if there are homes in that neighborhood that don't have a garage. That would be a consideration. But if they do have a garage, then that also needs to be a consideration. And I don't think that we should necessarily be making plans so that the city can store your stuff. The other question that I'd be really curious to know is how many 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and 4-bedroom apartments are in Panorama? Because if those,
We were told that.
are there 5? Are there also 5-bedroom
There
apartments?
are 5-bedroom as well.
And do all of those apartments only have 1 parking space?
I spoke with the apartments when they first implemented.
I would love to hear what you have to say, but I'm going to get told that I totally want to hear what you have to say. So 5-bedroom apartments. And if all of those apartments have 1 parking space, I think that works in 1950. But I don't think it works now. I mean, I think that needs to be something that we consider as well.
I was under the impression that for 1 and 2-bedroom apartments, you get 1 spot. For anything over 2 bedrooms, you get 1 spot, and then you are put on a waiting list for a 2nd spot, because they're not enough to go around to everybody.
Mhm.
And then there's also garages that
I think
but there's only a
17.
handful of those that the waiting list is rather long for. I think there's less than 12 or 13 of those on the property.
Well, I think, I mean, look, I absolutely feel for the folks living in single family dwellings in Eagle Point. They need to be able to park on the street. I'm not sure that it's reasonable for them to park every car on the street though. And so I think that needs to be something that we consider. And also, you know, a 5-bedroom household with one car. I don't know that family personally. I don't know those people. I've said I have 6 drivers in my household and we have 7 cars. And I'm glad we don't live on Frontier, you know, because I don't know how we do it. Okay, I'm sorry, that's all I had.
The first version of this, we had landed on 3 parking spaces and then we whittled that down to 2. If we were to go on a case by case basis, you get 1 and then you have to prove that you have that many vehicles that outnumbered the garage.
Yeah, and well, you know, I was thinking about that and also the number of drivers in your home. I think if you have 3 cars in your home and there's only 1 driver, again, I don't know that you know, the city should be subsidizing Jay Leno with extra cars, you know, places to park his cars. If you want to have a collection, that's great. But I don't know that the city can afford the spaces to store it for you.
I think the logistics of, after I said what I just said, I'm thinking as you're talking, the logistics of putting that on the police department to decide who gets more than 2 would probably be not feasible. It would put us in the position of having to say no a lot. And I don't know if that would be a good position to be in with this program. I feel like 2 parking spaces per household and then maybe a way to petition for more. I mean, eventually we're gonna have to say no and put a stop to it.
Yeah, I guess my gut level response would be that if your household has 2 cars and a garage, then it might not be fair to say to the city, you need to provide us with all of the parking for our, you know, you have parking, you have a garage.
I totally understand that.
Councilmember Benson, just as a point of clarification, are you referring to the folks that are living in the homes, the folks that are also in Panorama? How-
Well, with that comment, I was specifically referring to people who have their own garage. So that'd be, I would assume, mostly single family dwellings. I think that if you live in Panorama and you have one of these garages and you have a parking space, then the same sort of thinking would apply. But I don't know how many people are like that. I don't know how many people have that situation in Panorama.
Not very many.
I'm ignorant to that. But I like your idea of the limited time as well.
Well, at this point, can we go ahead and take citizen comment?
Please.
So if anyone is here and would like to speak to this matter, if you would go ahead and come up and state your name. Then you can let us know generally if you live in the city. And just let us know what your concerns are.
And how long do you want?
Probably two minutes, yeah.
Could we do 3?
Let's go ahead and do 3. 3 minutes, yeah.
Fantastic.
Please.
Hi, folks. For the record, my name is Tara Lee Spencer. I live in the Panorama Apartments in unit A305. Sorry, I've moved within the buildings. Just some things I did want to clarify is I moved from a 3-bedroom down to a 1-bedroom. They only have one bed. They only have 1 parking spot for those places as well. And same thing, you can petition for an additional spot. It doesn't mean that you can receive that. I did also, and I can submit these for the record. I actually brought them along for you because I was in conversation when they first implemented the parking issue, the parking features when we moved in there. I think I was in there about 3 or 4 months before they had enough, they were full to capacity and they needed to structure the parking situation in some way, shape or form. And I had brought up to them at the time because the original protocol was going to be that if you didn't move your car, they were going to tow it. If you didn't have a permit on your car, even though like some of our, we have a high percentage of families with small children, special needs residents. So there was a lot of like not consideration taken when they started implementing these things. So I did bring it to their attention, but I also included the paragraph where I said another concern I have as a community member is that the solution to the parking overflow is forcing people to park in the community above, which seems to be inconsiderate to that community. They now have 30+ cars taking up their parking areas in front of their houses every night. Statistically, it's also making the entire community more prone to theft and break-ins. And then, but also, again, I brought this, and you are more than welcome to look at it. I brought up several things to their attention. I wanted to thank everybody who has been considerate, because I know that, again, these cars out on the streets are problematic for the community, and they have a right to want to park in front of their houses. The parking in the facility, in the community, or the parking done by HNN was, I moved from another facility. We did only have one parking spot that was designated as ours, but we also had enough spots that it was kind of like a free for all, but at least you could park on the property. So I guess I was a little confused when that occurred. I did ask them also if they would be attending, and they said that our parking policy here at Panorama is set per HNN community standards. On-site management has no control over this policy, and we are required to enforce our policies as outlined in your lease agreement. Overflow parking is an unfortunate component of a multifamily community of this size. While we strive to accommodate our residents and give an equal opportunity for everyone to have at least one parking spot, we unfortunately do not have enough parking to accommodate households with additional vehicles. Management will not be attending this meeting, but we did provide council with data, statistics, and our parking policy. I live up at the top. I'll close with this too. I live up at the top by the pea patches. I took a picture the other night at 9 o'clock in the evening of at least 15 empty spots that are always empty all the time. I don't know what they're there for, but so I would encourage council to maybe try to more directly ask the management, maybe the higher management, how they determined their parking numbers. Because if nothing else, if we're continuing to put these type of residents, these types of communities inside of these high wealth communities, there's going to be a lot of pushback, and rightfully so. And we just don't want to see no communities being built because the management is not doing a considerate job of the surrounding communities in that decision making. But thank you for your time. That's really all I have. Thanks. Oh, and did you want these copies? I brought them for you.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll leave them up here then.
Thank you. And thank you for coming this evening. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Very much. Hello, my name is Roxanne. I too am a resident at Panorama, though I do not have a parking issue there. I felt it was my responsibility to be part of my community, to be representing them. So I do want to touch what you said about garages. I've been reading a bunch of articles, and places like Orange County, LA, they have implemented a lot of permit parking. And the biggest issue they've had is people turning their garages into storage, into extra bedrooms, and people moving their cars out onto the street. And then the apartments and the condos, all their people nowhere to park. And it's become a huge ordeal. And what happens is that you've now provided a homeowner with the potential of a new storage room, a new extra bedroom, and no way, you're not assessing this. You are providing this homeowner with potential to now add to their property on the city's budget. So that to me is something to consider. Now, secondly, Jacobia. So I do know, like, people with disabilities could still park in a permitted parking based on the RCW codes and Washington's laws for people with disabilities. Very few places they cannot park. So I do realize that would not implement them. However, Jacobia, you're talking 3 to 4 blocks. Rainy weather, snowy weather, people have jobs. We want to look good. 3 to 4 blocks is significant. Do you want to show up at your job after 3 to 4 block walk even with an umbrella. It's, I mean, we're talking about people that are now in affordable housing. Some of them just now getting back on their feet. They're already struggling. And, you know, they probably already have to face like the challenge of owning 2 cars, let alone now like having to figure out how and where to park them. And now we're saying, well, you got to keep parking further away and further away and further away. You know, how long is it, Jacobia, before you say, oh, people don't want to see your car there either. You got to go further away. That's what worries me. I mean, I'm concerned with, you know, instead of like pushing people out, find solutions. There's a hospital every night I look out my building. I see a ton of parking in the back, even during the day. I took the day off today so I could be here. Drove up and down my street, Frontier, noticing that yes, there's a lot of daytime parking, which made me question why all these cars are parked out there. Do they not work? I know I'm out of time. So I do think that we need to do something there. Lack of realistic public transportation. The people with the jobs, the stay-at-home mom, if she had realistic public transportation, she probably wouldn't need to rely on a second car. She could get to the store and everywhere else. Easy peasy. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Hi there, I'm Piper. I thought there would be a lot more people here and I would not be speaking, but I live at Panorama with my husband. And when we got this letter on the door, thank you for posting that. That was really helpful. You know, I was immediately surprised because, like you said, on Jacobia, or no, Frontier, there's always parking spots. You said you went out on Sunday and there were lots of parking spots available. So I was surprised that this was being brought to a public safety meeting. Especially since I used to live in the city and you had to park very, very far away from your home. And I understand that it would be really frustrating for the homeowners that there are new people parking on their streets. That is sort of a part of change and bringing more people into your community and development. So I want to be considerate of them as well, but I didn't think that I would ever be living in low-income housing. And I'm in a situation where my husband has to drive to work and I have to drive to work. And if I don't have a place to park, like, how am I ever going to get out of low-income housing? I am a special education paraeducator and I give a lot to my community. And I just don't want to be in a situation where I'm pushed out of where I live again because I can't afford to live there. And I am mostly crying because I hate public speaking, yeah, I mean, it's stressful. And I like look around and I'm thinking like, oh, no one's here. And then I remember like a lot of the individuals in our community don't speak English. A lot of them have 4 kids in their family. You know, they don't have time. Maybe they're working right now. They don't have time to come. They don't have a 9-to-5 job. And I just, I appreciate you guys coming. I appreciate you doing all this research. And I hope that there is a solution that does not end up kicking people out who are just trying to, you know, move up. And I hope one day I can be a homeowner and be annoyed that there are people working on my street. But anyways, thank you. You probably don't want to talk. What's next?
Good job.
Okay,
It was
thanks.
good. Thank you for coming and speaking. It's very important to have you guys here and we appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Yeah, I would like to thank each one of you guys. This was the missing component over the last couple of months. And I really wanted to get your guys' voice in this, because I think it's very important. As I was sitting here listening to them, it dawned on me that maybe if we go back all the way to January, when I stood before you and asked for new language in the 24-hour parking to where you aren't allowed to keep your car for 24 hours and just move it a couple of inches to get away with that maybe if instead of going through all of this, because I believe we do have unintended consequences to this decision, and it's ones that we're not going to be able to see all of them, and we're not going to be able to make everybody happy and have this be equitable. Maybe I'll put this to you that maybe we should table this for a little bit and maybe think about all of the information that we've received over the last couple of months and the voices that we heard tonight, and maybe look at doing the 24-hour parking language first to see if that alleviates the issue. The problem of having cars parked for days on end would be addressed in that. But it would still allow as business as usual for these people that are trying to just live their lives and park. So I put that to you. I was very impressed and moved by what I just heard, and I think it's okay to come this far and maybe admit that maybe this wasn't the best thing before we do it.
I agree completely with that course of action. I really appreciate the work that you did in terms of reaching out to the community and getting the feedback. I think that it was so important to have that. Parking is not, parking is something that affects everyone on a day-to-day basis, multiple times a day. And I think that would be a course of action that I would prefer to proceed with at this point. Council members.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all the residents that came tonight. Obviously, we don't have visitors very often, and your voices matter a lot. We're going to be not only dealing with the parking issue, but we want to make sure that we have a community that welcomes everyone. And part of that is making sure people can work and live in the same community, which is a challenge of itself. You give up a parking space, the trade-off between parking in someone's home can be the difference. But we're also an island when it comes to public transportation. We don't have access. Try to go from here to Auburn. If you have a job in Auburn, there is no way of getting there unless you're willing to go 3 hours by metro to get there one way. And that certainly has been on the top of this council's mind, the administration, the mayor, and we continue to need to push that forward. I'm very thankful for your input because we need to hear your side of the story as well. And I think the last takeaway is it's so important, the details that the council delves into when we have new developments to make sure that everybody can be accommodated fairly equitably, and realize that we are a car dependent community. And that means if you have to have a car, that takes money out of your pocket, and it's money you can't spend locally. And it's all around. So thank you. And I agree with Captain Lynch. We need to continue to find a way forward that's sensitive to everyone and that is respectful of everyone. And lastly, Piper, I deeply appreciate that you're working with kids of special needs. My wife is a paraeducator in that area, and that's something that we need to make sure that we have a place for you here to live and feel great about your community. So thank you for sharing that.
Councilmember Benson.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to table this to the point where we didn't continue looking into it, because I don't think that this is a solution without merits. But there are things that I would like to know. I would like to know if Panorama management is underutilizing parking spaces. I would be curious to know if we have somebody here in the city, maybe Mike or somebody like that, who could just do a drive-through of that parking lot, because I would be curious to know if maybe tandem parking spots for some units are a possibility that aren't being used. If there are places where more parking spots could be put and they're just not being used, these spots that you pointed out near the P patches, not familiar enough with the parking. I need to go drive through Panorama myself and just get a look at it. But yeah, this seems like it's a real problem. The problem that you originally came to us was people working on their cars for weeks on end on residential streets. That's still a real problem, and I would like that to be something that we clamp down on, because but at the same time, it seems to me that this is an issue that Panorama can help with, at least to some extent, that residents in Eagle Point outside of Panorama can also be helping. If they're expecting all of their parking to be street parking, then I get it. I've filled a garage up with stuff before. I get it, but it's not everybody doing their part to alleviate the problem. I would also like to, I would love to get, I don't know if it's possible for us to get the information reliably, but I would like to know how many cars we have in Panorama from Panorama residents over the number of parking spaces that are there, just to get a better idea of what is it that we're trying to achieve here. So if we do table this, I hope it's not a table where we're not continuing to do the research that we need to find the solution to the problem.
The request has already been made through the management there to get those numbers for you with how many cars are actually there, or spaces that would be needed for everybody to have enough. I will continue to speak to the management and to get that for you.
And I know that I will be very interested to learn if they are not helpful and forthcoming with helping with the solution. That would be strange to me if they weren't.
Management people that we spoke to and that I've spoke to are very helpful. They're very nice. They let me know that they do have limitations because this is a corporate outside of the area run facility, that they're only working under the guidance that comes down from their corporate supervisors. So I've heard directly from the manager that there's nothing they can do to change this. So that's the limitations that I run into from the actual facility.
Well, then I know that I would like to know who those corporate people are, because I have some questions for them.
So in that case, it sounds like, at least at this point, we'll take it off and maybe revisit some other options.
Okay.
And then circle back. It sounds like everyone is in agreement, correct? And then we can consider what parking looks like once we've kind of looked at some of the other pieces, and go ahead and go from there.
Okay. Thank you guys very much for listening to these guys.
And thank you again for all of your hard work, because I know you put in a ton. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Fire Department Strategic Plan Extension Resolution.
This was teed up by Chief Carrera, I believe, at the last meeting. Talked about we needed to extend our current strategic plan for the fire department by 1 year. We're required for our accreditation through the CPSC to have a strategic plan in place. Our last one was done in 2017. It was approved beginning of 2018, but it was Chief Carrera originally planned on doing another strategic plan in 2023. But with his departure, and then also looking at the city was going to do one in 2024, there was merit in combining the efforts together so that the same person did both strategic plans, so that the goals could be aligned with the city goals. So this is the formal agenda bill or resolution extending that strategic plan for 1 more year, which would give us to the end of, theoretically, to the end of 2023, And then in 2024, we'd be looking at creating the new one in line with what the city's planning on doing.
Any comments, council members?
Seems reasonable.
I have no issues with that.
Sounds good. I'm generally in favor of adopting it as well. I obviously wouldn't want to have this become a habit, but obviously we're in a different circumstance with Chief Kerr leaving after 8 years, and I think it'd be prudent to stay on the plan that we're on until we can figure out what the next plans will be and who will be filling his shoes.
And it does at the back of the documents, it calls out the goals that we weren't able to reach from the first strategic plan. So it does give us some things to work on in the meantime while we're waiting for the next strategic plan to be done. So that is part of the document.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the motion to adopt the resolution will go forward then. And
Does that go on consent or?
if it's a resolution. Yeah, it could go on consent, right? I'm comfortable with that. Council members?
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right, so go ahead and put it on consent then. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the items on our agenda today. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
All right, the meeting's adjourned.
thank you.
Right, thank you all. Thanks.